She stood in the rain, screaming his name like it was a curse, her voice slicing through the storm. You think you can just walk away from him? You're nothing but a coward. Ethan. The street was empty, but her words echoed, each one a dagger aimed at Ethan's heart. He stood frozen, his jacket soaked, wondering how a love that once burned so brightly could now feel like a battlefield. This wasn't just about money or duty. It was about a boy caught in the crossfire of broken promises and a past Ethan thought he'd buried. Ethan had met Lisa 6 years ago, back when life felt simpler, when love seemed like the answer to every question. She was a single mom then, her 4-year-old son, Caleb, clinging to her like she was his entire world. Ethan didn't just fall for Lisa, he fell for Caleb too. The kid's wide-eyed curiosity, his endless questions about the stars, the way he'd tug at Ethan's sleeve to show him a new drawing, it all carved a place in Ethan's heart. He'd promised to be there, not just for Lisa, but for Caleb, to be the father figure the boy never had. They'd built a life together, a fragile but beautiful family, until it all unraveled. The breakup was brutal. Lisa's temper, once a spark Ethan found endearing, became a wildfire. Arguments turned into shouting matches, then silence. When they parted ways 2 years ago, Ethan tried to stay in Caleb's life. He'd take the boy to baseball games, help with homework, even slip Lisa money when she was short on rent. But Lisa's demands grew: more money, more time, more of Ethan's soul. "You owe us," she'd say, her voice sharp with entitlement. Ethan, drained and heartbroken, finally drew a line. He stopped the payments. He stepped back. And now, Lisa was out for blood. The call came on a Tuesday night, the kind of night where the city felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Ethan was at his small apartment, nursing a beer, when his phone lit up with Lisa's name. He almost didn't answer, but something in his gut told him to pick up. Her voice was venom. "You think you can abandon Caleb? I'll call CPS. Ethan, I'll tell them you neglected him, that you're a deadbeat who walked out." Ethan's heart sank. CPS, Child Protective Services. The threat was a gut punch. He hadn't adopted Caleb legally, but he'd been the closest thing to a dad the boy had. Now, Lisa was weaponizing that bond to destroy him. Ethan leaned against the wall, his mind racing. He hadn't neglected Caleb. He'd loved him, provided for him, even after the breakup. But Lisa's story was different. She'd been telling anyone who'd listen that Ethan had abandoned them, that he'd promised to support Caleb forever and then bailed. She'd even posted on social media, vague but vicious, "Some men pretend to care, then leave kids to starve." The comments piled up, strangers calling him a monster, a deadbeat. Ethan's friends started asking questions, their voices tinged with doubt. He felt the weight of judgment closing in. He drove to Lisa's place the next day, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. He wasn't sure what he'd say, but he needed to see Caleb, to know the boy was okay. When he pulled up, Lisa was waiting on the porch, her arms crossed, her face a mask of rage. "You've got some nerve showing up here," she spat. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm not here to fight, Lisa. I just want to see Caleb. I need to know he's all right." Her laugh was bitter. "All right, he cries for you. Ethan, he asks why you don't love him anymore. And you think you can just waltz back in." The words hit harder than any punch. Ethan remembered the last time he'd seen Caleb, 6 months ago, at a park. The boy had hugged him so tight, his small arms shaking. "Are you coming back?" Caleb had asked, his voice small. Ethan had promised he'd try, but life got in the way: work, bills, the constant fights with Lisa. Now, standing on that porch, he felt like a failure. "I never stopped caring," he said, his voice cracking. "But I can't keep giving you money. Lisa, I'm barely getting by myself." Her eyes narrowed. "Then you're no better than his real dad, and I'll make sure everyone knows it." The threat of CPS loomed larger now. Ethan knew Lisa wasn't bluffing. She'd always been relentless when she felt wronged. He spent the next few days researching, calling lawyers, trying to understand his rights. He wasn't Caleb's legal guardian, so CPS couldn't touch him. Could they? But the fear gnawed at him. What if Lisa spun a story so convincing that they investigated him anyway? What if Caleb believed her lies? The thought of the boy thinking Ethan had abandoned him was unbearable. Ethan decided to fight back, not with anger, but with truth. He reached out to mutual friends, explaining his side. He showed them the receipts, literally, bank statements proving the thousands he'd given Lisa over the years, even after they'd split, text messages where she'd demanded more, calling him selfish when he couldn't pay. Slowly, the narrative shifted. Friends who doubted him started to see the full picture. One even apologized, saying, "I didn't know she was twisting it like that." But the real battle was for Caleb. Ethan knew he couldn't let Lisa's threats keep him away from the boy. He contacted a family mediator, someone neutral who could help them navigate the mess. The first meeting was tense, Lisa's glare burning holes through him. But Ethan stayed calm, focusing on Caleb. "I want to be in his life," he said, "not as a bank account, but as someone who cares." The mediator suggested supervised visits, a way to rebuild trust without Lisa's interference. To Ethan's surprise, Lisa agreed, though her jaw was tight with resentment. The first visit was at a community center, a neutral ground. Caleb ran to Ethan, his face lighting up despite the months apart. "I missed you," the boy whispered, and Ethan's throat tightened. They spent the afternoon playing basketball, talking about school, about the stars Caleb still loved. Ethan didn't badmouth Lisa. He didn't need to. He just listened, letting Caleb feel safe. When the boy asked why Ethan had stopped coming, he answered honestly, "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Buddy, I thought stepping back would make things easier for your mom, but I never stopped loving you." Over the next few months, Ethan rebuilt his bond with Caleb. Lisa's threats faded as she saw Ethan wasn't backing down. The CPS scare never materialized. Lisa's bluff had been just that, a desperate attempt to control him. But the experience changed Ethan. He realized love wasn't just about showing up. It was about fighting for what mattered, even when it hurt. He started volunteering at Caleb's school, helping other kids who needed a mentor. He found purpose in being the man he'd promised Caleb he'd be. Lisa, too, softened over time. The mediator helped her see that her anger was hurting Caleb more than Ethan. She didn't apologize, not her style, but she stopped the public attacks. The social media posts came down. Ethan didn't need her approval, though. He had Caleb's smile, the way the boy looked at him like he was a hero. That was enough. The story doesn't end with a neat bow. Life's messy, and Ethan knew he'd always walk a tightrope with Lisa. But he'd learned something vital. Love isn't a transaction. It's a choice, one he'd make every day for Caleb. He'd be there, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And in that choice, he found a strength he didn't know he had. What do you think? Did Ethan do the right thing by stepping back, then fighting to stay in Caleb's life? Or should he have handled it differently? Share your thoughts below.